Hey, happy Sunday. I apologize for my tardiness, but my goodness, what goes on behind the scenes, y'all would laugh hilariously. I am Coach Yolanda, owner of Evolving Spirit Wellness. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Mama Meditations. I am grateful that we are back again. Happy Sunday, Erica. I love y'all. I really, really do. I love how you show up for me, show up for yourselves, so that we can collectively grow together. I love it. I love it. Thank you. There are some new faces and names. You are subscribing to my YouTube channel, and I'm so grateful for that. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook, on my personal page, because I don't have a business page on Facebook. I had one and I was like, I am my business. It is personal. And so if you are friends with me on Facebook and you are following me there, hey. And if you are following me on YouTube, hey, we do this every Sunday, 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We meditate. I run my mouth. You guys give feedback. We talk about it. We support one another. We love one another. And that is why I call it Mama Meditations, because similar to what your mother may have done for you, conversations never just stay on one thing. They kind of go all around, but there's wisdom in every word. And so today we're going to be talking about discipline versus punishment. I was going to talk primarily about discipline, but I really want to make a distinction between the two. I was going to give a disclaimer for those of us who feel as if we haven't resolved some of our issues from our childhood. If we were punished, and it doesn't even have to be severely, if we were punished in a way that impacts how we feel about ourselves, we may not have healed those issues just yet. So I want everyone to be gentle and kind, not just with yourself, but with your caregivers, whether it was your parents, grandparents, older siblings, people in the neighborhood, people at school, whomever may have been an authority figure for you when you were a child and felt as though it was their responsibility to guide you, punish you, discipline you. If there are some long-standing traumatic issues that you have not resolved just yet, this might not be the meditation for you. This also may not be the meditation for you if you have a belief that violence is the answer to instructing children how to behave, how to grow, how to develop. I will confess that when my children were younger, I would sometimes smack them on the bottom or pinch them or do things, thinking that I was doing the right thing. I'm so grateful for grace. Hey, my love, happy Sunday. I'm so grateful for grace and for an understanding that that was not true, that there was a particular consciousness that I think many of us have that leads us to believe that violence is okay. It is never okay. So we're going to talk about that. If any one of you wants to come into the comments and argue your point that you think spankings or beatings are okay, you might want to exit stage left because I'm never going to think it's okay. I don't care what it is. I don't care who it is. I don't care how it's done. Beatings, violence is not okay. It's not okay with children. It's not okay with adults. If someone were to come up to you and say, I'm going to teach you how to do something, and then smack you if you didn't do it right, you would think it was wrong. So it's wrong when it's children. And so when we talk about this age range, this developmental stage, 3 to 6 years of age, when the brain is just developing and you're just starting to figure out how to do things well, punishment is at an all-time high. Discipline is at an all-time high because you have this individual who at one point was this malleable figure where you could get it to do things, and now it is developing a mind of its own, instincts and impulses that they don't even understand. Grandbaby girl just left here. And my goodness, my God, as I see her maturing and I see the wheels in her brain starting to work about what she wants to do versus what we want her to do, and where are the battle lines going to be drawn. I am grateful that this go round as a parent, as a grandparent, I can do it in a more loving way and more consciously aware of what my authority figure may do to her developing brain. And so let's make a distinction between discipline and punishment because discipline teaches structure. And that's what we all need. I don't care how old you get, you're going to need some discipline. It teaches structure, it teaches you where you are in your learning process. Um, and it doesn't have to be violent. When you're young, 3, 4, 5, 6, the only form of communication that you have sometimes is your behavior. So a lot of times we think about discipline as it relates to behavior, but behavior is a form of communication. When you have a very, very young child who doesn't have the language to express themselves, it comes out in their behavior. I'm trying to tell you something that I don't even understand myself, so I am going to show you in my behavior. That doesn't change. As adults, our behavior is a form of communication. What we're thinking, what we're feeling, and if we're not able to express it, our behavior may align with what it is that we are going through. And again, trying to create structure in your life. I don't care if it's you exercising, it's you trying a new diet, whatever it is, if you are introducing violence into it, it is now becoming a violent behavior and a habit. And so we have to be very, very clear that when we are instituting discipline in our lives or in the life of someone else, that we are doing so for the highest good of everyone involved. So I love reading definitions. So I want to read some definitions about discipline, and then we're going to talk about punishment. And so let's start with this one, the Revealing Word Dictionary, metaphysical terms, the Metaphysical Dictionary. Under disciple, which is really a form of discipline, one who receives instruction from another. So if I'm trying to teach you something, then I have to be invested in the lesson. I have to be invested in your growth. I have to be invested in your well being. Violence should not be a part of it. Calling of disciple. To call a disciple is mentally to recognize that disciple, it is to identify oneself with the intelligence working at a center. Meaning, if I am disciplining you, I understand that you have a level of intelligence that we are going to be working towards something. that there is something within you that works and that works well, and I want to see it work well. Nowhere in here did it say anything about violence. I get to beat you because I want you to do what I want you to do. This dictionary is a New Thought dictionary, also a metaphysical term. Disciplining consciousness. And when you think about discipline versus punishment, let's think of it in terms of the consciousness. What is the intention and the energy of, and the motivation behind it? Disciplining consciousness, bringing our mental reactions under control, not holding thoughts, but rather consciously deciding what thoughts shall be loose. So if we're thinking about discipline, how it shows up in our lives now, how it showed up in our life then, it is about a measure of control, but the control that you want to release into the world. So if you think about a 3 year old, a 4 year old, a 5 year old, a 6 year old, they're like clay, right? And what are we modeling? What are we creating? What is it that we want to place into the world? Good morning, Erica. So think about that in terms of what may have happened in your childhood experiences, in terms of discipline, where people were invested in you becoming a, beneficial member of society. Sometimes the discipline that we received was not always consciously thought out. Sometimes through our own good, for our own good, our caregivers may have done something immediately that needed to be done because of our for safety reasons or for other reasons. This is not about blaming your caregivers. This is not about projecting onto them. This is not about betraying. I love my mother and father. Daniel and Rosa to me will remain on a pedestal, but their methods of discipline were inappropriate. I can say that as a truth, as a fact, not an opinion. Their methods of discipline were inappropriate. Were they effective? Some would say yes, that I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't have that type of discipline, but I don't know that to be true. I don't know if they chose another way to discipline me, if my life would be different. But what I do know that there were methods of their behavior that were inappropriate. Anytime either one of those people who I love dearly placed their hands on my body in a way to discipline me, it was inappropriate. But because it is part of the consciousness of discipline for some people, we have lived with it. It can be generational. It can be, absolutely. For those of us who may not have directly experienced the violence that was done to those in our family, our ancestors, and those oh so long ago, doesn't mean that we are not still products of that violent environment, where sometimes we even believe that violence is the way to recorrect or redirect or to introduce focus. Let's rid ourselves of that consciousness that we believe that somehow violence is an appropriate way to instruct or to help someone. It is not. So let's talk about punishment. My group read, I'm sorry, y'all, the cover of the book is gone, but this is All About Love by Bell Hooks. And part of reading this last year with my group, we went chapter by chapter. Chapter two. Chapter two is about justice and how we learn particular lessons in our childhood when our brains are developing. And so Bell Hooks included this introduction for this chapter. And I'm telling you, the whole chapter, we probably should have done 2 months on this chapter alone because it really planted a seed about unlearning particular lessons about love. Severe separations in early life leave emotional scars on the brain because they assault the essential human connection, the parent child bond, which teaches us that we are lovable. That's our first love. Our caregivers, they are our first love, our first introduction into love. The parent child bond teaches us how to love. We cannot be whole human beings Indeed, we may find it hard to be human without the sustenance of this first attachment. And that's a quote from Judith Vorse. So, the first lesson of love that we learn is that parent child bond, even if it wasn't your biological parent, your caregivers at a very young age, and particularly in this developmental stage. That's your first lesson of love. And when things don't start adding up, you tell me you love me, but you spank me. You tell me you love me, but you tell me I can't eat, I can't have dinner, and I got to go to my room. You're telling me you love me, but yet the punishment that you are giving a 3 year old, a 4 year old, a 5 year old, a 6 year old doesn't always resonate as love. Children are very, very smart detectives. And so when the things don't start adding up, it teaches you a lesson that sometimes when people love you, they can hurt you. And it's okay, particularly when they're telling you this is for your own good. Imagine what that sounds like to a developing brain. 3 year old makes a mistake. You're too old, you know better. You should know better. You're always acting up. You're a bad girl, you're a bad boy. And now I have to punish you. Now you got to go here. You got to go away from us because you don't know how to act. Imagine what that sounds like to a developing brain because a punishment takes power away. And it's at this age and stage where kids are learning to develop their own personality, their needs, their wants, their desires, where the caregivers feel like we got to nip that in the bud. We've got to control that. And what that really is about taking away power. Discipline is more about teaching structure. And there is a very, very, very clear difference between disciplining someone and enacting a punishment, particularly if the punishment doesn't always seem to be equitable to what happens. So if I'm 4 years old and I drop a cup of milk and I get punished for it, but then I do something like take a pair of scissors and I, cut a hole in my mother's tablecloth and I get beaten for it. How are those two? How am I able to discern between those two things? What was a mistake versus what was a blatant disrespect? How am I supposed to if the punishment is the same? Or you're always yelling at me? How am I supposed to understand where everything is the same, consequence? Because punishments are often very quick, without any explanation, and without that equitable distribution. Particularly if you're in a household with a lot of kids and everybody gets punished the same, particularly if you didn't do it. I used to work at a childcare center that had this motto: "When one falls, we all fall." Oh my God, I used to couldn't stand that. And I remember being in school and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and then one of your classmates acts up, and then the entire class gets punished. That teaches children lessons about love that follow over into adulthood. And I just want to read one more paragraph from Bell Hooks, All About Love. We learn about love in childhood, whether our homes are happy or troubled, our families functional or dysfunctional. It's the original school of love. I cannot remember ever wanting to ask my parents to define love. To my child's mind, love was the good feeling you got when family treated you like you mattered and you treated them like they mattered. Love was always and only about good feeling. In early adolescence, when we were whipped and told that these punishments were for our own good, or I'm doing this because I love you, my siblings and I were confused. Why was harsh punishment a gesture of love? Oh my gosh. As children do, we pretend to accept this grown up logic, but we know in our hearts it was not right. We knew it was a lie. Just like the lie the grown ups told when they explained after the harsh punishment, it hurts me more than it hurts you. There is nothing that creates more confusion about love in the minds and hearts of children than unkind and or cruel punishment meted out by the grown-ups that they have been taught they should love and respect. Such children learn early on to question the meaning of love, to yearn for love even as they doubt it exists. We have got to be very, very clear about our first lesson of love because it determines how we love ourselves, it determines how we love one another. And if we think that violence is okay, then it's going to be okay for you to be violent to yourself. Happy Sunday, my love. It is never going to be okay for you to be violent to yourself. And violence is not just physical, there's spiritual violence, there's mental violence, emotional violence, financial violence. There are individuals who believe that they can take power away based upon the position that they hold in your life. That's not love. If you are with someone and you feel like you have to do particular things because they hold all the cards financially, that's not love. And if someone is enacting that kind of power over you, I can do what I want because I'm older than you, I'm bigger than you, I have more money than you need me. That's what this first love teaches us as children. We need our parents, we need our caregivers, we need the adults to make it safe for us, to make sure that we are safe. But if any part of that relationship contains violence, whether it's in word, action, withholding, whatever it looks like, then we start to learn this lesson that this is what love looks like. And when you're 3, 4, 5, or 6, you don't have the emotional maturity to understand that even if your caregivers are instituting a discipline or punishment for your own good, you don't have the emotional maturity to understand that. And so you start to learn a lesson that even the people that love you have a right to hurt and harm you. Even saying it makes me cringe to think that there may have been a time in my life that I taught my children it was okay for me to be a bully, that it was okay for me to dominate over them, that it was my way and whatever they wanted didn't matter. But I know that I did it. And I know that it was done to me, and I'm sure it was done generation before and before and before and before. And for those of us who have a history of enslavement in our lineage, you absolutely know that violence was the order of the day, and that's still with us. Any one of us that believes it's okay. And whether you have religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs that say, oh, well, the Bible says we should, I would argue that your interpretation is inaccurate. Because I ain't never felt like God beat me up. I never felt like God wanted me to get punched in the face or slapped or hit with a belt. I've never felt that way. And children are smart enough to recognize the difference, but they may not have the emotional maturity to make the discernment between the distinction of discipline versus punishment. But it lends the question, do we know the difference between discipline and punishment? How much violence are we creating in our own lives when we feel like we have to do particular things in order to get an outcome that's desirable? Well, I want to lose some weight, so let me starve myself. That's violent. Well, I want to, make some money, so let me work 20 million hours a week and not sleep. That's violent. It's violent. I want to have peace in my life, so I'm going to isolate myself and not form any, connections with other people. I'm withdrawn, I'm isolated. That's violent. And when we don't learn as children, when we don't learn the distinction between discipline and instruction and punishment and the taking of power, we grow up feeling like we have to do particular things to keep ourselves safe. So we don't trust people because we learned early on how not to trust those we depended on to take care of us. Or at the other extreme, I don't know how to make choices for myself. because everything in my childhood was really, really confusing. And even when I felt like I was right, somebody else told me I was wrong and punished me, even when I was right. That scenario I was just talking about. You're in the class doing what you're supposed to do. Somebody else that you don't even know, don't all the way on the other side of the classroom acts up, you get punished. So you don't know what right and wrong is anymore because there doesn't seem to be any equitable distribution or consequences. And a lot of that is about control, classroom management. I get it. Teachers got to control the classroom. But think about, do you want to control people by taking away their power? Or do you want to control people or control the environment and make sure that the environment is conducive to learning? Do you want to create some disciples or do you want to create people who know how to also act violently in the world? Because the soil determines the quality of the harvest. So if the environment is toxic and harmful, what do you think you're going to reap? Your environment leads to how you will be, how you will grow. And so, if violent, even at its most extreme or pockets of things that may have happened, again, that may not have had malicious intent, I know that my parents, well, I think that my parents did not have malicious intent when they were giving out punishments. I know they weren't equitable. I know between my brother and I, they were not equitable. And sometimes they were quick without rhyme or reason and no instruction or explanation of why I have to do what it is that I'm doing, what it is that I'm trying to do. Grandbaby girl was just listening to a cartoon where the cartoon dad told the kids to do something. They said, why? He said, because I'm bigger than you. I was like, I jumped back, like, what are we watching? What are we telling kids? That if I'm bigger than you, I get to tell you what to do? We have to be very, very clear where these things start so that we can understand how they came to be. And so, if you have in your experience as an adult where you don't know how to cope, your coping mechanisms are not what you would like for them to be. It could be because the coping mechanism of instruction wasn't clear in your childhood. You got punished for everything. And so you might feel like, I don't ever want to have any punishment. I just want to be out here doing whatever I want to do. Or you don't know how to do anything at all. So your limitations in your life are the way in which you live. So many limitations. I don't do this. I don't do that. I don't do this. I don't do that. I'm never going to try that. I'm never going to try this. I'm never going to do that. And that may be because your childhood had so many limitations. We used to joke and kid about the kids who were raised in strict households that the minute they turned into an adult, they were going to be crazy in the world because they never quite got to experience anything in life. Sometimes that happens, or to the other extreme, they begin to be adults that still don't want to experience life. Because again, this developmental stage from 3 to 6 years of age is where children start to, explore the world and figure things out for themselves. But if you have not been given that opportunity to explore, if you have not been given that opportunity to allow your developing brain to actually develop at its own pace and with its own process, then you might be an adult that doesn't know how to do that as well. Mm, let's talk about it, Erica. Erica says, I'm so grateful that the beatings she received convinced her not to do that to her child. Everyone said you were too easy, but she has grown up with more self esteem. My goodness, my God. Erica, if we knew then what we know now, perhaps we wouldn't have a group of individuals who are fighting to develop their own self esteem and self purpose and self value. I'm so grateful that you made that decision as well, Erica. And as I said, I'm grateful that I may not have done it in the way that my parents did, but I know I still did it. But I'm thankful that I get another chance with grandbaby girl to never allow that to be part of her experience. If I have anything to do with it, I pray that violence at the hands of the people who love her will never be part of her life experience because I know it was for me and it made it difficult. for me to navigate romantic relationships because of it. And so I'm grateful, Erica, that you saw what that did and made different choices for your daughter so that you see her self-esteem is in a place that perhaps yours may not have. But it's never too late. It's never too late for us to be very, very clear about discipline and punishment and what it may have done. Because discipline is important. We need it, and we're gonna get there. But I still want to talk about punishment and the effects of it and what happens to us. We may always feel like we were the black sheep, particularly if the punishment that was enacted in your family was not equitable. I know of circumstances in my upbringing where I thought my brother didn't get punishment the way that I did, and vice versa. Oh, he's a boy, so sometimes his punishment was hard earned. Boy, they were hard on my brother, and I would sit back and watch like, wow, I hope they don't do that to me. And I would even admit sometimes throwing my brother under the bus. It's like it's survival. It's Lord of the Flies in here. It's survival of the fittest. If they're gonna get one of us, it's gonna have to be you. Sorry, brother. It's gonna have to be you because that's what violence teaches us. I gotta save myself no matter what. It teaches us survival, where we will feel like either we're the black sheep of the family and nobody loves us, so we gotta stick to ourselves, or we feel like I got to tell on everybody because I don't want to get what they are getting. If you watched one of your siblings being treated inappropriately, it still does something to you. If you watched other children, it doesn't even have to be somebody in your family. You know, when we go to school and we start having all of these children from different backgrounds coming in together, and you see and witness how authority figures treat some children. There were some kids that I grew up with where I still I wonder what happened because the adults were not kind. The adults were not loving. The adults were really like rode their back. And you wonder if they ever had love at home, at school, and all of the places where children are just being children. And we're punishing them instead of discipline. And we're going to get to discipline because it's important. I don't care who you are. You have to have order in your life. You have to have some discipline. But when you don't get it, when your brain is developing in an appropriate way, then you feel like I got to survive out in these streets. So I'm going to create some things that tell me I'm keeping myself straight. Or you don't learn how to do particular things. So all of the emotionally undeveloped, unavailable people, and I consider myself to have been that way at one point in time in my life, didn't want to feel anything, didn't want to talk about feelings, and wanted to associate with others who didn't want to talk about feelings either. If I'm emotionally unavailable, I want to be with somebody who's not going to make me feel. That's the last thing I want, to be with someone that's going to make me feel. But then you don't know how to communicate your needs, your wants, your desires, or you learn to be a people pleaser and an overachiever because for children, just as it said in All About Love, children want to do is please the people who feed them, who clothe them, who keep them safe. They just want, listen, if you've ever seen children just run up to you with just nothing and they're like, look, and you're like, what is a rock? They want to please us. We don't lose that as adults. We want to make sure that we are pleasing to other people. So we're either people pleasers or we're overthinkers. We're doing all of these things because no one showed us how to do particular things appropriately. Again, punishment comes quick without explanation. I don't know about y'all, and I'm not trying to make my mother out to be some kind of tyrant because she really wasn't. I can probably count on my hands how many times my mother spanked me versus the number of times my father spanked me. But when it came, boy, like a shoe would come flying past your head, and you're like, what the heck is going on? Because that's how punishment comes, because it's usually emotionally driven. The people who are enacting the punishment, it's usually because something emotionally has broken for them and they have had it. I was just yelling at the dogs. because what were they doing? Being dogs. And I was like, if y'all don't move out the way, and I caught myself like, you are always yelling at these dogs, and they're dogs. If you have not enacted some discipline in order for them, then they're just going to do whatever they want to do. But they don't deserve to be punished for something that you have not taught them. So now I got to think about my dogs as being disciples so I can instruct them appropriately. And certainly, just like Erica said, if you had childhood experiences of violence, your self value, because it does not make sense to a developing brain that if you say you love me, if you say I am the sunshine in your life, if you say that your world was not complete until I was born as your child, then why are you hurting me? Why are you harming me? Why are you doing something to my body, to my mind, to my spirit that feels so painful? And for those of us, again, be kind and gentle with yourself. If you had physical violence in your childhood, those scars don't go away. Even if you can't see the actual scar on your body, the body keeps everything. It is energy. It is energy. I don't know if anyone has ever experienced or witnessed someone who thinks they're about to be hit. And what that does, the chemicals that get released when you think someone is about to hit you, put your body into a state of being that sometimes never leaves, where you're always bracing for the next hit, the next scream. You know, people who are jumpy are people who have never learned how to calm their nervous system because their nervous systems have always been on high alert. That's why some people don't know how to turn their brains off. We have people who are insomniacs. We have individuals who don't like to be touched because your body doesn't forget that. And you have to learn now how to regulate your nervous system so that it's not reactionary to everything. I recognize, even with loud noises, I get really jittery sometimes. Growing up in a household where doors could be slammed or pots could be slammed, it does that to you and it doesn't leave you until you learn how to regulate or you learn how to numb. You learn how to numb yourself to protect yourself. But then you also keep out all of the glorious things that are happening around you. You can't even really connect to it because you've been in survival mode for so long. And so that those are all of the things that punishment can do to us. Let's talk about discipline. And I would recommend for anyone who wants to discover more about love, you better get Bell Hooks All About Love and read it because it really does open up your mind to a different perspective. It is not specifically an inner child healing book, but it absolutely will do some inner child healing for you because it will ask you to redefine what you believe love to be and what your lessons of love may have been. And so discipline is a healthy agreement. It's a healthy agreement. Look at it that way. It's a healthy agreement. It's a healthy contract with yourself or with others that say, I'm invested in your well being. So, going back to the other scenario, let's say you want to lose some weight. How do you create the discipline that says, I'm going to create a healthy agreement with myself that I want to eat differently. I want to lose weight because I want to feel better. Not, nobody loves me. I ain't cute. So I got to lose this weight. That's a different energy. Discipline is a healthy agreement between you and someone else, between a group of people that say, I care about you. You know, all of the laws, traffic laws that we have are supposed to keep us safe, right? You stay in your lane, I stay in my lane. I'll use my turn signal, you use your turn signal. That's discipline. You have to be disciplined. You have to be instructed how to do that. Anything that you want to do, that you want to do well, you better have a discipline plan. You better have something that includes conscious choices, focus, commitment, consistency, love, accountability, responsibility, ownership, because you know it's for your highest good. And that's what appropriate discipline in that 3 to 6 year age range looks like. There were times when my parents were like, "Listen, we need to have a conversation because you out here just acting all kind of crazy, and that's not what we do. I need you to sit, and I need you to sit for X amount of time so you can calm yourself down." Coming with an explanation that includes, "I want you to be well. I need you to stop doing that because if you don't, you're going to get hurt." And if you hear that over and over, if it's repeated to you, at some point you get the message, "Oh, they don't want me to hurt myself because they love me." Instead of, "If you don't sit your tail down, I'm going to give you something to sit down." That's a threat. I don't want anybody to love me with threats. I would love to be loved with more discipline and focus and intentionality that says, "I love you and I want the best for you. So let's create some focus and some order and some structure so that you can grow, so that you can flourish, so you don't have to feel like you have to be emotionally unavailable because this is a safe way." Discipline says I'm safe because there are some parameters in place to make sure that I'm safe. So if I call someone and say I want to lose some weight, they better not tell me, "Well, I'm going to be in your ear yelling at you." And I used to tell myself that's what I have to have. I have to have somebody yelling at me. I have to have someone punishing me. And where do you think that started? We even asked for violence to be introduced into our lives because we've been taught that that's the only way. "Oh, you want to learn how to do XYZ? Well, you're going to have to stop everything cold turkey and it's going to be hard and it's going to hurt you." I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I used to. I no longer understand why we believe we have to be punished in order to grow. Now, that doesn't mean that your growth is going to be easy and that your growth is going to look, without issue, without challenges. And it doesn't mean that the discipline that you enact in your life isn't going to be difficult either. It's going to be new. It's not going to be hard. It's going to be new. And anything new comes with that moment of, "I got to figure this out. I may not do it well, but if I'm consistent and I'm committed, that means not giving up when it is difficult. That means not giving up if I lose focus. That means my choices have to reflect with the thing that I say that I have a healthy agreement towards." So if I say I want to lose weight and I'm creating this healthy agreement, then my choices need to look like that. My conscious choices need to look like that's what I'm doing and not just what I'm saying. Because what happens when we don't have discipline and order, we're more likely to go to punishment. Okay, so I didn't really have a plan in place for losing this weight, and now my birthday's coming up, and I can't get into this dress. So what am I going to do? Starve myself. For any of you that remember that episode on the Cosby Show when Claire wanted to get into that dress, and Debbie Allen, her sister, portrayed her coach, and boy, she was mean and nasty, and they was fighting over the croutons. That's what happens when you don't have a plan in place and time is of the essence. You're going to fall back into punishing yourself. I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and the deadline is tomorrow, so now I got to stay up all night. I didn't have structure. I didn't have order. I wasn't committed and I wasn't consistent. So now I got to scramble. And scrambling is not a conscious choice. Scrambling is, "Oh my gosh, I'm panicking. I don't know what to do." So discipline is good for us as long as we understand energy and the intention of it. We have to have discipline. You have to, but you have to be clear that it is discipline and not punishment. So let's take some deep breaths. and meditate on that, because I also believe that with discipline comes some cleansing. Now, last week we talked about that. We talked about the forgiveness that has to come with discipline, because we could sure get caught up in the cycle of punishment if we start to tell the story of, if you had lost this weight a year ago, you wouldn't be in this position. If you had done this, if you coulda, shoulda, woulda, they're not going to help you. So leave them alone and start from where you are and say, now that I am consciously aware of the lack of focus and attention and love and accountability that I had in this plan, I am willing to do it differently this time. I'm going to have more discipline in order and structure. And the people that I am enacting with, your environment, are going to be very clear about what it is that I want to do for me. So remember, I talked about the environment leads to who you will be. So if you say you want to do something and you're hanging with people that don't want you to succeed, why? Why? If I know that losing weight or getting fit is what it is that I want to do, then I can't be in an environment that disrupts that process. And if people love me and are invested in my growth, they're not going to say, oh, girl, don't worry about that diet. Come on out and eat and eat and eat and eat. Or come out, we're going drinking. Or do what I want you to do, and the heck with whatever discipline or determine whatever. And then what happens? We feel bad. And then we tell ourselves, you deserve the punishment because you didn't stick to your guns. It's so easy to jump from discipline to punishment when we don't think of ourselves in a healthy way. That's why your discipline has to have love. And love doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want. Love means structure. Love means order. Love means focus. Love means attention, commitment, consistency. I don't know what kind of love y'all want in your life, but I know all of those words have to be included in love for me, and discipline has to be in there. So if we say we're going to do something, we got to do it. And we need to create a plan to support this healthy outcome that we are creating for ourselves. Because if we don't, we're going to wind up punishing ourselves. If there's no order, y'all ever seen the police in the riot gear? That's what your mind looks like sometimes when things are all out of order and nothing has been restored. Now you got to bring in the SWAT team. And the SWAT team doesn't care about love. They don't care about nothing but getting the job done. And so we have to be very, very clear on how discipline is in our lives, in our relationship with discipline, so that we don't fall into the habits of punishment, where we are operating from a place that says, you are a bad girl, you are a bad boy. So now these things have to be enacted because you don't know how to act. You're old enough to know better, but obviously you don't. So here's some punishment for you. And how many times have we used punishment to get what we want? Somebody doesn't do what we want them to do, so we stop talking to them. We avoid them. We don't tell the truth. We don't have a clarifying conversation to clear the air. Whatever it looks like, punishment isn't just physical. Those mental games, those mind games, those emotional games, they got all of the names for them, gaslighting, all of that stuff is a punishment because I don't see you as equal. I don't see you as human. I don't even see you. I'm just out here punishing myself, so I'm going to punish you too. So if we don't have discipline, the riot gear is going to come out. The SWAT team is going to be called to restore some order. And so let's take some deep breaths and think about how beautiful discipline is and how it can enhance our life and how it is necessary for our wholeness. And if I go back to this definition of disciplining consciousness, bringing our mental reactions under control, not holding thoughts, but rather consciously deciding what thoughts shall be loose. It's like you have the angel and the devil on your shoulder. Which one you going to be listening to? Which one is going to be your guiding force? Hopefully, it's the one that's going to be loving and the one that is going to enact discipline by saying, okay, we tried it the other way, it didn't work. So let's take some deep breaths. Think about the environment that we find ourselves in, even in this right now moment. Are you in your life in an environment that's disciplined? Or is life dragging you by the collar and you feel like you're being punished for something? I hope you can, Erica. I hope all of us, that is my desire for all of us to think about discipline as a loving action. It's because you love yourself so much that you are creating order, structure, consistency, commitment. Listen, if we were talking about a romantic love, wouldn't you want someone who's romantically involved with you to be consistent and committed? Then you have to be consistent and committed to yourself. We have to be committed and consistent to ourselves because we are disciples. We are students. We are learning at all times. There are always lessons going on around us. How do you want to receive it? Don't you want to receive it in a loving way? And so, thinking about the environment that you are in, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, is it conducive to discipline? Because if it's not, if you are in a physical environment which makes it difficult for you to be consistent and committed, then you won't be. If you are in a headspace mentally that isn't conducive for discipline, and what I mean by that is, are you open and willing to be wrong sometimes? That you don't know everything, that there is another way of doing something? Are you open to being taught? Are you open to learning? Do you want to expand your consciousness? If you do, then you can't live like this, withdrawn and isolated. You got to live like this. And so think about your mental environment in this right now moment. Ask yourself mentally, am I in a space in my life where the thoughts that I carry can hold discipline? Can I focus on something for longer than 10 seconds? Can I create habits, mental habits? That means structure and habits and rituals that I am doing on a consistent basis that will support me mentally so that discipline is part of the way that I love myself. Mm, I'm so glad that was recorded because I like that. I'm going to have to write that down for myself. Are your mental choices and your mental state of being where you needed to be, Yolanda, so that the choices look like discipline, which includes focus, consistency, and commitment? Now think about yourself emotionally. Whew. Where are you at with feeling everything? Are you able to handle all that may be required so that you are emotionally disciplined to not react to everything that comes your way? Are you going to fall apart every time something in your life falls apart? Are you in a space emotionally where you can be disciplined enough not to go in a downward spiral just because things are not working the way that you think that they should? Are you peaceful in your spirit enough so that you can remain committed even if it doesn't look the way you think it's supposed to look? Emotionally, you have to be in a place where you're not all over the place so that you can remain consistent when life is very inconsistent. Think about yourself spiritually. Are you spiritually disciplined? Do you have habits and rituals and things that you are doing on a consistent basis? Are you going to the God of your understanding first before you cuss, cry, complain, and want to tell everybody how horrible life is? Or are you spiritually disciplined to say, I'm going to stand on what God says first? I'm going to pray about it, I'm going to meditate, and I'm going to do what I know God has wanted me to do from the beginning of my time here. Trust God first and foremost before you get caught up in everybody else's stuff. Are you in a physical environment? Think about the way that you live your life and the places that you go and the people that are surrounding you. Is it conducive to discipline? Listen, I'm right now, I got a cabinet. I've always had this cabinet in any house that I've been in, the snack cabinet. Who is responsible for the physical environment of that snack cabinet? Me. I buy the stuff. Am I disciplined enough to have the cookies in there where I'm not eating cookies? No, I'm not. I know I'm not. So guess what? I got to change the environment of the snack cabinet. I bought me some fruit yesterday because I know I'm not disciplined physically. I can't be in a space where there are things that I know that I want that are not good for me. And so I am very clear. If I want to be physically disciplined, I have to be committed and consistent and create an environment, a physical environment for that to be so. I can't be watching TV when I should be walking outside and getting some exercise. I can't be engaged in gossip on the phone when I should be sitting somewhere studying. I have to create that environment because I also have to create the healthy agreement. So, what is your agreement with yourself physically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally? Where if anybody was reading the book of you, could they see the discipline in the order, in the structure, in the focus? Could they see it? Could they see that you have particular habits? Oh, you have a planner so that you know where you're going to be and you know what you're responsible for. Great. Oh, you have a budget, which I don't. You have a budget so that you're fiscally disciplined and you know where your money is coming and going. Oh, great. Oh, you have a regular exercise routine. Oh, you eat on a regular basis. So you're having the required meals every day. We have to do that for ourselves. Nobody's going to come along and be like, okay, I'm going to create some discipline for you because I'm telling you if they do, it's going to look like punishment. It's gonna because it has to be because they are not you and they don't know what your experiences are with particular things. You know you best. So if I said to someone, if I called up a financial counselor and I said, do a budget for me, I guarantee you it's gonna feel like a punishment because they're gonna look like, what the heck are you doing with your money? Oh, we gotta enact all of these things. How about no access to credit cards? How about you get a allowance every week? That is absolutely gonna feel like a punishment to me. So I have to create the discipline, the healthy agreement with myself. Now, I can ask other people for help, but if I don't initiate it, it's going to feel like punishment. I'm going to resist, I'm going to rebel, and nobody wants that. We want successful, healthy outcomes. Then you got to create the environment. Well, that will be possible. And so think about your relationship with discipline and punishment. Where are you punishing yourself? Take a deep breath. And just like we talked about last week, you better confess it and forgive yourself for it. And then start to create healthy agreements with yourself. I'm telling you, if you know where you need to grow, then you know where to give yourself the attention. If you had a garden and half of the garden was growing well and the other half was not, you would want to look at the half that wasn't and say, well, what is it not getting? I got to focus my attention over here. It's no different than your own state of being. If you know you are not disciplined in particular areas of your life, you got to give that part of you attention and love. Where could you use some more commitment and consistency so that you're not running to punish yourself? And are you very clear about where that started for you? Again, for those of us who may have had the experience of violence, and I'm not just talking about the extreme cases of violence, neglect, abandonment. I mean all of it, where it still is in your body because it is. I've said it more than once about I can't Just can't tolerate people yelling at me. Just can't tolerate it. And I used to put up with it because I didn't want of the people who were yelling, I didn't want them to think that, I was a bad girl or, I didn't appreciate them. Even if they're yelling, was them thinking that they were doing something good for me. All it sounded like was Charlie Brown's teacher. I can't hear you when you're yelling at me. All I'm thinking of is how do I protect myself? And I'm an Aries, so yelling at me is probably not going to be good for you. But I know where that comes from. I grew up in a household where it would be really quiet one minute and then really loud the next. Someone yelling about something. And even if it wasn't connected to me, I still absorbed it. I still feel it. And so we have to think about what was my relationship with punishment and violence when I was younger. And it can be challenging as an adult to resolve those issues if the person or persons who enacted that punishment are still in your life. Erica said she's overscheduled and now you have trouble making and keeping schedule for yourself. Ooh, let's talk about the generation of kids who have so much going on and they believe that that's the way that life is supposed to be, filled up with experiences. You got them in dance and soccer and piano lessons, and everything is so methodically planned out that they don't have any time to be free. And then you grow up to be an adult that either abandons doing anything or you can't function unless you got 20 million things on your calendar. We got to balance ourselves out. And it's going to be difficult to do that without discipline. That is another reason why we need it, because it creates balance. It's a healthy agreement. Giselle says, working on that. And as long as you are working on it, you are aware of it, you acknowledge that it is a challenge for you, you will more likely be open, gotta be open to doing something about it. We are talking about loving ourselves, not leaving ourselves. And so the 3-year-old in you, the 4-year-old in you, the 5-year-old in you, the 6-year-old in you absolutely wants discipline. Children without discipline can often be afraid, unaware of what's expected or what to do. So healthy discipline is appropriate. So your young you, they want you to have discipline. They want you to do away with the punishment. I'm telling you. I am telling you what I know to be true. Your inner children are done with the punishing. Done with it. Done with it. Done with the messaging that it sends that there's something wrong with you or you're always out of pocket. You can't get it right. Life is, you know, greater than you. Whatever the story that's going on in your head, I know what it sounds like in mine. And I know that I work very, very hard. Very, very hard. And even though I say it's not hard, it's new. It's new every single day for me to keep myself at a particular level where I don't spiral into punishment, where I am checking myself by saying, you haven't eaten today, Yolanda. You know better than that. Let's go. Come on. Let's get something in. And I'm grateful for it. Grateful for it. Where I am not overscheduling myself because I feel like if I'm not doing something that I am not of value. Oh, we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours because it comes out in so many different ways. We really got to get clear about our relationship with violence, our relationship with punishment, and our relationship with discipline. It really is a loving principle to have in your life and to have in the relationships that you create with people where there's some order, there's commitment and consistency. You know what it feels like to be in relationship with someone who's not committed and who's inconsistent. Oh, who wants that? No one. No one. No one. We are deserving of far greater than inconsistent people with inconsistent feelings, inconsistent thoughts. We don't have time for that. But I do recognize and I want to acknowledge that it can be challenging to do this work for yourself if, in fact, that punishing energy is still present. And for many of us, we still have adults in our lives who that's the way they are, that's all they know how to be. They're still telling you, you old enough to know better. I can't believe you're doing that. Why would you do that? The judging, the criticizing, it can be very challenging not to fall into the trap of that punishment or feel like you got to defend yourself. If you know that you have a great way of redirecting yourself so that your choices change and transform, you don't need to hear anybody else's voices. But if you do have people in your life who are genuinely concerned about your well being, it may be worthy of a conversation with yourself to really check in and say, do I have discipline in my life? Am I out here just doing whatever, whenever, however? It might be true, but you get to decide what that looks like for you. Giselle says, discipline as an act of self love, a really radical and affirmative way to move forward. I hope so. It was radical for me to tell myself, you've got to put some things in place so that you are loving yourself well. You've got to put it on the calendar and commit to it and say, this is what you're going to do and not waffle because you don't know if it's the right choice. I know who I am and I know what choices are right for me. And that has come from being disciplined and consistent and committed and accountable and asking myself, is this the you that you say you want to be? Because if it's not, then you better look at your physical environment, your spiritual environment, your mental environment, or your emotional environment and enact some discipline, some structure, some order, some consistency, some commitment, some accountability and responsibility. It really is an act of self love to say, I am disciplined enough to know who I am, know what I'm saying yes to, know what I'm saying no to. I'm clear. Whew, I am clear. I am clear. I feel like such an adult, like if I go out to a restaurant and I know exactly what I want to eat and I stick with it. You know, sometimes they give you the menu and you're like, oh, I thought I wanted this. Now I don't know if I want that. I'm so grateful those moments in my life where I'm clear about what I want. I don't care how many other things you got on this menu that look good, sound good, whatever. I'm committed to what it is that I want. And it doesn't just happen at restaurants, it happens in other places in my life. And I'm so proud of myself when I stay committed to my vision. When I, whew, that's why it really is an act of love like no other. To stay true to you with all of the options that we have available out here, to stay true to what you have committed to because of your discipline and not because you punished yourself. We love a good story. You know, people love to tell you how they fought, blood, sweat, tears to get to where they got. I love being able to say, I know what I wanted and I went after it and I got it because I was disciplined. And I want the same for each and every single one of us. I want us to have a healthy relationship with discipline. I don't want us to have to tell a story that sounds like I had to beat myself up to get here. Where's the honor and glory in that? You know, we have this thing with suffering where we glorify it. I know one thing, at the end of my life, nobody's going to, you know, be giving me a better place in the ground because I suffered. So I want what I'm doing right now to be based from a place of love and not a place of suffering. And I'm telling you, discipline is the way to do that instead of punishing yourself. You don't deserve it. You don't deserve to be punished. You don't. And if you are punishing yourself for something that happened so long ago, this is your invitation from me to you. Please stop and love yourself. Love yourself. And if other people are punishing you for something, it's time for you to stop it first. Confess what it is, enter into self forgiveness, but please don't punish yourself for somebody else's benefit. I am so grateful for each and every single one of you. and what you bring to this space, what you bring to my life, and how you challenge me. Oh, and how you challenge me to do just that, to be there for me. That is part of the environment of discipline because I come here every Sunday at 1 o'clock. I have to prepare for this. I have to be clear about what I'm going to say, and I have to be true to it. So I thank you for being part of my disciplinary plan for my spiritual life. That's why it's important to be in a community, in an environment of other people who keep you and hold you accountable and make you feel like you want to be responsible and consistent and committed. And so, yes, Erica, you have to show up for yourself the way you show up for other people. You have to, because they're not going to just say, stop being so kind to us, Erica, and take care of yourself. No, you have to set the discipline that says, this is where this ends. I am no longer depleting myself for other people. And so I am grateful that you are part of my disciplinary plan for my spiritual life, that we are committed, that we are consistent, and that the choices that we make to be here and to engage and to love on one another, I want that everywhere I go. And the fact that I can do it with you means so much to me, and I am grateful. Listen, nobody's going to do it for you. And if they do, it's going to look like a punishment, and we don't do that anymore. I'm too big to be on punishment. I can remember saying that when I was younger. I'm too big to be, well, I'm saying it now. I'm far too big to be on punishment. I'm not putting myself on punishment. I hope that you don't do that either. We will be back next week. I don't even know what we're talking about because, listen, grandbaby girl came through here like a tornado, and all my stuff is everywhere. But what I do know, it will be the last conversation around this age and stage, 3 to 6 years old. Now we're going to take a huge leap in May because we're going to be looking from 6 years old to 12 years old. You know, that's a lot going on. From the time someone is 6 years of age to the time that they're 12, almost a teenager, Lord help us all. It's a lot that goes on in that stage. And the energy of that stage is about heart work. So we are going to, for the month of May, we are going to be doing some serious, serious heart work. Doesn't mean that everything that we haven't been doing isn't serious. It has been. But the heart, everything flows to and flows from the heart. And so next month, um, the real nitty gritty, I say that every month, but next Sunday will be our last in this stage in age. So the last in the solar plexus arena, which is about our thoughts. Now we're going to get to the heart of the matter next month. And I'm so glad that we've been doing this work together. Thank you, Erica. I show up for us, all of us, because I want us to be well. I know what it feels like to not be well. And I still have my moments where discipline is the furthest thing from my mind. And there are some moments when even coming on Sunday can be challenging based upon all of the other things that I have to do. But I think about you guys. I think about this place. I think about my life. And I know what that feels like when people don't show up for you. And I don't want to be like that. I don't want to put that energy out into the world. And I'm grateful that you show up for yourselves. I love y'all. I hope that you get to enjoy the rest of this day. I hope this entire week you'll start to write down where you may be punishing yourself, where you may be disciplining, and give yourself thumbs up if you know you have things in order that look like discipline. That means you have a healthy agreement. But tell the truth if there are places and spaces where you're like, I could use a little discipline in this arena of my life. I could use a little discipline, but I'm not going to punish myself. I'm going to do it in a loving way. I love y'all. Thank y'all for being here. Thank you for sharing space with me. And till next Sunday, let us be committed and consistent with loving ourselves and anybody else who happens to want to join in. I love y'all. Thank y'all. Bye.